All right, welcome to another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Today we have a very special guest, Nick, on here from All Sharks No Bite. We're going to be talking about the Sharks season, how are they looking this year. So get in the chat, like and subscribe. Let's go. All right, as always, that intro is brought to you by Ezera, their new song Blind, out now wherever you listen to music. Nick, what'd you think of the intro, my man? You're the headbanging in the background. Are you a little bit of a metal fan or what?
You know, I'm not a big metal guy, but I'm not a metal guy either. So I definitely feel pumped up after that. Some of the footage there definitely brought back some unpleasant memories for me. I'll tell your audience right now, I'm still not over the reverse sweep, and I don't think I ever will be. But yeah, I'm very hyped up by the intro for sure.
It's just something that lives with you. We got Trapper9 here in the chat. Go Kings, go! Thank you guys. Hit that like button on your way in. Nick, why don't you kind of tell everybody like how long you've been a Sharks fan, how long you've been writing or talking about the Sharks, and then we'll get into the content here.
Yeah, I've been a Sharks fan for pretty much my whole life. My parents moved to the Bay Area from Chicago when I was like 3.5. My dad worked for a radio station that gave away season tickets to a handful of games. So we would go to like 5 games a year. So I've been going to games since I was 5. I was overwhelmed by the noise in the arena when I was a kid, so we didn't go back for a few years because I had to get over my fear of loud noises. But got back out there, and I've really been a fan ever since. I fell in love with the Sharks on a fan appreciation day in I want to say it was like 1999 or something, and the Sharks gave away black hats for Fan Appreciation Day, and Mike Ricci scored a hat trick against the Dallas Stars, and every single hat that was given away wound up on the ice. And I really fell in love with it ever since. And there's been a lot of highs and lows as a Sharks fan, but that's part of my personality now, is living and dying with the Sharks.
Well, I don't know if you know, I'm from Northern California. I grew up closer to Tahoe on 50, like in Placerville area.
Right.
And then I didn't become a Kings fan until after the Olympics, where Canada and the United States went into overtime. Kind of fell in love with hockey like way later in my life. And my mom and dad are both from LA. And so, cause my fandom is kind of split. So like I have like the Kings and, and the Dodgers kind of, but my main team, as Trapper said here, are at PDAs, was Oakland, but then I'm also across Bay Area. I like the Niners. So I'm just a little bit all over the place. And it's like wherever I found enjoyment. And I remember like after that, those Olympics, I'm like, okay, like I need to start watching more hockey. So obviously the Sharks were the team that was local for me, but I really liked Dustin Brown in the Olympics, and I just liked the way he played the game, a lot of hits. The intro to our video is him taking Sedin's head off. So I was like, okay, like I'm open. They're an LA team. The Sharks are here. So, I'd see the Sharks game on at the bar, and then I would see when they played LA, and I kind of just gravitated more towards LA. And then I kind of got lucky on the first playoff series I started watching, which was 2011, where the team was kind of like getting pretty good. I was like, okay, they're looking like they're on their way up. And then next year, obviously the 8th seed going and winning the Stanley Cup kind of solidified it for me on that run. But it was just still hard, watching games or watching Kings games up there. But it just sucked me in, and I've been a fan ever since. And it's kind of taken over with the A's kind of being a dumpster fire of an organization. Hockey has moved in and become one of my favorite sports. And I don't think if baseball took a hit, I don't think I would have had enough time to watch football, baseball, and hockey all the time and devote my time and effort into learning about the game as much as I did. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it worked out. And, I was doing my homework beforehand and I saw that on Twitter that you're a 49ers fan. So I feel like I'm at least in comfortable, not entirely enemy territory. But look, you chose wisely. The, 2 Stanley Cups already for the LA Kings. The Sharks are still, not close. So you've gotten your money's worth out of becoming a Kings fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think I deserve it with the bitterness from the A's, and then like both the championships for my teams, A's in '89, and then I think it was '94 for the Niners. I'm like 7 or less. Like I don't even remember any of it. So going through all the turmoil with the A's over the years, having 2 cups for the Kings feels good. So let's get into it. Speaking of feeling good, watching the Sharks play last year probably didn't feel too good, but that allowed you to get the number 1 overall pick. And it seemed to be like a slam dunk more, in the back-to-back years, with the first overall pick being just one single guy. So for you, was it always Macklin Celebrini at 1, or did you have any other dark horses that you really liked, or it was like, thank God we got the number 1 overall pick because this is a dude?
It was Celebrini all the way. Not just because of what he's able to do on the ice, but he's got the Bay Area background with Rick Celebrini, his dad, working for the Golden State Warriors. I think he grew up, shooting hoops with Draymond Green and all those guys. So it's not only a great hockey move to have him here, but it's great marketing too. The Sharks really haven't had a guy that can kind of be the face of the franchise and kind of galvanize the fans around here since, Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau retired. So to have Macklin Celebrini sort of be the face both on and off the ice is huge. There definitely wasn't anyone else. It basically became an inside joke with me and my friends, like, oh, watch, they're not going to take Celebrini. It's just going to be more misery. But they made the right call, and I'm glad with the way it turned out.
I know the fanfare grew exponentially with the pick of Byfield. I know a lot of people were upset with not getting LaFerriere, but having that Byfield pick and having him organization and watching the team, gain all these picks with Turcotte and Clark and everything really kind of brought us back from the despair. You have the diehards that watch every single game, no matter how good the team is. But sometimes it's nice to have a little fanfare around the team. How has the fanfare been around Macklin Celebrini and the other prospects from your guys' pool?
The fans are pumped. I think every day I go on to Reddit and someone else is posting their new Celebrini jersey that they got. So there's a ton of buzz around town. I'm pretty sure jersey and ticket sales skyrocketed as soon as Celebrini became the official pick. So fans are pumped, and especially
how is he handling that?
He's been so good, man. He's been so good. He already sounds like a veteran. After the first preseason game that he played, he was talking already about how we can't be content with losing and that's not going to be acceptable here. And when do you ever hear that from a rookie after his first preseason game? Like, I can't remember that happening. So he's really embracing it. Seems really comfortable in his own skin, and he already seems pretty wise beyond his years. And I think he's setting the tone, which I know the new head coach, Ryan Warsofsky, is really pumped about. It seems like they're both in lockstep.
What are fans' expectations for him? I'm sure there's some wildly crazy ones. I'm sure there's some relatively tame ones. What are the expectations for him? And then where do you think he'll start in the lineup for the Sharks?
Yeah, expectations are pretty high. I've heard Craig Buttons of the world saying that they think he can get 70 points this season. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility at all, but I'm not quite willing to go that far. I think 50 or 60 is definitely in reach for him. In terms of where he starts in the lineup, he's been playing on the top line in the preseason, in practice and in games. So it's hard to imagine that he's not going to get a good look there, at least to start off. And he's going to have some really good veterans on his wings. So he's been playing with Tyler Toffoli and Michael Gramland quite a bit. And it sounds like him and Toffoli already have really good chemistry. So expectations are high, and he's definitely going to get a chance to play top line minutes, I think, and see what he can do against the best defenseman on the other team. I was going to say he's going to be seeing a lot of guys like Drew Doughty, but unfortunately that's not going to be the case. But I think he'll be seeing a lot of the top competition on the other team.
Whoa, we're 10 minutes in. You're already taking shots. I understand. No, I think it's good. And he's going to like a guy by, in like Toffs there on the first line, multiple 30 goal scorer. Just a really good guy wherever he's been. I think he's a locker room favorite by all accounts. I know he was on the Kings, but in other organizations. And his wife does a lot with the communities, I believe, for the Dodgers. But all around where they're at, they do a lot of giving back and that type of work. So I think you're gonna really like you're gonna like Tyler Toffoli, but I think the Celebrini is gonna like him on his wing.
Yeah, and there's already been chemistry there, which is amazing. If you had a chance to look at the highlights from their first preseason game, those two were finding each other on the ice. Celebrini set him up with a beautiful little backdoor tap in. It was very Crosby-esque, the tap in by Tyler Toffoli. So I'm really excited to see them play together. I think we're going to get a pretty good dose of those two. And like you're saying, I don't think you could ask for a much better guy because Toffoli's been around the block, good veteran guy. He knows how to put the puck in the net, and Celebrini is a fantastic playmaker. So it feels like a match made in heaven.
Well, they're already watching Niners games together, but another top 5 pick, Will Smith, is trying to make a name for himself too, and he's no slouch. Fans are probably excited in picturing what this 1-2 punch will look like a few years down the road, but they might get an opportunity to see that this year. How has he looked in camp, and where do you think his mindset is going to the season?
Yeah, I've seen some people be critical of him, but after his first preseason game the other day, Coach Ryan Warsofsky was really, really happy with him and heaped a lot of praise on Will Smith for his ability to play with pace and get to the middle of the ice. He did mention that there are some things that he wants him to clean up, which you can imagine a rookie playing his first stint in the NHL. That's going to be just the facts of life. I haven't had a chance to see him with my own eyes yet because the Sharks tragically do not televise their preseason games. I don't know why or who that serves, but they don't put him on TV. But the word out of camp has been, I think, overall really positive, and I think it's going to be pretty similar for him as it is with Celebrini, where they're going to surround him with good veterans who can put the puck in the net. I know that Smith has been playing a lot with Fabian Zetterlund. I think they're on a line together tonight. And that feels like a good match too, because Zetterlund had a fantastic year shooting the puck last year. He had 24 goals. And we all know what Will Smith can do with the puck. He's an absolute playmaker. So it's going to be a great 1-2 punch. And I know it's going to put butts in seats at SAP Center for sure.
I don't know if what Greer and the head coach have said about how they plan on using him, but do you think having a great freshman year at Boston gives a trial by fire, so to speak, option more probability? Do you think he'll be on a pitch count like Leo Carlsson was last year for the Ducks? What's the vibe with him around camp and what his season possibly looks like?
I think he's going to get a really good chance to prove himself. Expectations are going to be high, not just because of the fact that he dominated in college last year, but the guys that he was drafted behind also had really successful seasons last year. Connor Bedard had 61 points. Adam Fantilli was on a 20-goal pace before he got injured. And I think Leo Carlsson was on the same pace as well in terms of goals and points. So the expectations are going to be high for him. I haven't heard anything about a pitch count for Will Smith. So I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity to get out there and cement himself in the lineup. One thing that I have not heard discussed from the Sharks or from anyone else, I wouldn't be surprised to see him play wing at some point this season. The Sharks, as bad as they are, have a lot of centers on their roster. So much so that Michael Granlund, who was their best center last year, is playing the wing here in training camp. So if the Sharks don't want to burden him defensively, they don't have to. If they want to give him looks on the wing, they can, because they've got plenty of other guys to slot in at center. Again, I haven't heard any talk of them doing that, but the Sharks have done it in the past. I think back to when Tomas Hertl was coming up. Obviously, it was a different leadership regime with the Sharks, but he played on the wing before he played center. So I think that possibility exists.
I mean, they did it as recently as with William Eklund, so
yeah,
who played center in the SHL. It's, is Eklund a chance to come back to center, or did he kind of envision on the wing? Is that why maybe you think will start on the wing as well, or like how do you kind of view your hypothesis that that's a possibility?
I think it's going to depend on his productivity, really. I think that if there's any struggles, or maybe as the Sharks get healthy, like we don't know if Logan Couture is going to be back. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But if he does end up coming back, then it's and when Thomas Bordeleau comes back from injury too, he's also a center. So I think it just depends on who's available at any given time. I think they want him to play center, and I think that's how it's going to start out, and it should start out that way. But they do have a lot of flexibility. Like you mentioned, William Eklund has been playing the wing here in training camp, but he can play center too. So I think it could potentially come back to what you were asking about earlier. Maybe they want to manage his minutes or get certain matchups, and it might be easier to do that with him on the wing versus on center. But I do know that at least to start out, he'll be at center. And I think that's the right thing to do, because it's going to be his natural position long term. So I know that the fans and myself are excited to see what he can do out of the box. So he'll at least be there to start.
Many top centers, many of the top players play center in juniors and stuff like that because they're the best player in the team. But you go onto the pros and it changes. I mean, obviously you want your top 5 pick to be a center. We all think Alex Turcotte should be a center now, or we're just hoping he plays on a roster, right? But they put Byfield up on the first line on wing. You see Trevor Zegras has played wing, and he looking like he'll probably stay there, where Byfield has made his way back. So, I mean, there's no one way, right way to treat a prospect. And if they feel like it's going to lighten his load and make it easier for him to be dynamic offensively, that's what they drafted him to be. So
exactly. And it'll be exciting. And if they think that he'll get better matchups, or if they just want to lighten the load on his defensive responsibility, I'm just glad that they have that kind of flexibility, because in recent seasons, especially last year, you look at the Sharks roster and it was not an NHL roster. So they at least have real legit players, and they have the flexibility to move guys around if they want.
I'm a real boy. Man, well, Sharks fans, don't get upset if Will Smith moves to wing. It's not the end of the world. And if it is the end of the world in your world, you can always use our sponsor here at BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the official sponsor of THPN and this podcast. What you can do with BetterHelp, you're always going to learn new skills, new coping mechanisms, ways to manage your day-to-day life. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity to yourself with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/THPN to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. Well, the rebuild is vastly, or is already in gear with Greer. And what is the pulse of the fans? I know fans can be very critical about who they should pick and what guys here and how they're developing the prospects and how much time they should get, yada, yada, yada. What is the kind of the pulse with Greer as the GM and how he's doing so far in this rebuild?
Yeah, I think it's really positive. I personally have been really impressed, and I think he won over a lot of people this offseason. Fans were understandably upset by the Tomas Hertl trade, especially with him going to Vegas. Other fan favorites like Timo Meier have also been moved out in the last couple of years. And I think the fans understand the reality that even though that hurts and it's unfortunate that with where the Sharks are, those were moves that had to be made, and it was for the benefit of the team. But he did have, I think, to kind of build back a little bit of the good sentiment from the fans after doing stuff like that. And this offseason was a slam dunk. I mean, drafting Celebrini, fans love the Sam Dickinson pick, and why wouldn't you? He finally went out and got his goalie of the future in Yaroslav Askarov. I know some fans were upset about some of the return and some of the trades. The Cody Ceci trade, I think fans were upset about the amount of money that was retained in that deal, but and also the fact that they helped a division rival. I don't think that's a big deal, but a lot of people didn't like it. But he's filled out this roster with amazing prospects, and all of the buzz that's going on around the Sharks right now, I think you can trace directly back to Mike Grier and the decisions that he's made.
So it's interesting because you're never going to win over every single fan on every single deal. But as long as I believe there's a swell of uptick amongst the fans, generally you can, feel that the GM is doing a right job. Not that he cares. He just wants to try to do what he thinks is best for the hockey team. What have you said you've viewed all his actions so far this summer as good. What do you think about his action of hiring your guys' new head coach, and what direction does that say to the organization?
Yeah, I love the move. The old retread coach, I think, is a really tired trope in the NHL, and I do understand it to a certain point because these are really big and risky investments. So you want to be hiring commodities that are actually proven. Ryan Warsofsky is a new NHL head coach, but he's won at every level that he's been at. And I like the fact that he's a player's coach. And this isn't me saying that, David Quinn or anyone in the past weren't players coaches, but the way that the leadership core on this team talks about Ryan Warsofsky, and when you listen to him in his interviews, he just seems like he really prioritizes effectively communicating with the players, being transparent. And I know every coach says that they value that, but I feel like you can tell in player interviews when they really mean it and when they don't. So I like that they went off the board. I was rooting for Warsofsky, and part of me was rooting for Marco Sturm as well, for nostalgia purposes. And I think Sturm was probably a great candidate, and he's going to get his chance somewhere else probably before too long. But I think this was a great move. And most importantly, the big thing I think was not letting him get away. I think they hired him to be on David Quinn's staff, knowing that he was going to be next in line, and he was going to be highly coveted if they didn't give him the job this year. So I think they made the right move. I'm super excited. And when you listen to the players talk about him, it sounds like they are really buying into what he's selling, which is great.
So not only with the players coach and being able to do that, he's brought in the right pieces. And in a recent article with Corey Pronman, rated the prospect pool at top 2 this season, and how they do that is all players underneath the age of 23 who have played a certain amount of games and yada yada. With quite a few players from this recent draft, as well as previous drafts, how have you viewed the assessment of how Grier views talent, right? And I'll ask that is like, obviously the way the Kings, we have a sturdy left side defense, and we have a playmaking right side defense. We have Carolina, who drafts nothing but high end skill, and they don't care if the prospects don't. Well, they don't. Not that they don't care, but they try to shoot for the apex hit in almost every single round. They don't really take a sure thing. They take guys that have all the upside but very little floor. So is Grier kind of in the middle? How does you think he views talent? What does this team look like in the future based on how he's drafted?
Yeah, I was worried actually when Mike Grier first took the job, because when he talked about what he wanted the Sharks' identity to be and what kind of game they were going to play and what kind of players they want to bring on board, he did not ever mention the word talent, ever. He never talked about skill. He always said, I want us to be tough to play against. I want us to be physical. I want us to be fast. He never talked about skill. And so that worried me a little bit, because I was like, is he just going to draft a team full of grinders? Like, I was a little bit worried. But when you look at his draft picks, I cannot complain about a single one. And Many of them have not played an NHL game yet, and time is going to tell if these were actually good picks or not. But he is drafting the best skill I think that he can find in the draft, and that's not always what the Sharks have done in the past. Under Doug Wilson, the Sharks had a really bad habit of reaching off the board, especially in the first round. It was not uncommon for them to get to their first round pick and then take someone, and then everyone was like, that guy wasn't on my first round board, and who even is this person? The example I always come back to is Ozzy Wiesblatt. That was their first round pick. I think they took him with the last pick of the first round in 2020 or 2021 or something. He has proven to not be an NHL player. And meanwhile, JJ Peterka was still on the board and was highly touted as a first round pick. He is now thriving in Buffalo. So I like that Mike Greer it seems that he's properly identified the talent. He's taking those big swings. He took a big swing on Igor Chernizhov in this past draft, who a lot of people worry about his defensive deficiencies, but is a bona fide offensive talent. So it seems that he really values talent and skill, and he has stockpiled a heck of a lot of it, which makes me really happy because that wasn't always the case for the San Jose Sharks draft strategy.
Yeah, I thought your last draft was really good. I really liked Igor, the pick of Igor. We did a draft whole series, and he was one of my top players for 21 for the Kings. Play driving winger, big body, able to take the puck to the net. I really like the game they brought. I'm really happy with Liam Greentree that we got at 25, but I wouldn't have been upset with Igor. And the fact that you guys got him in the second round was a steal, in my opinion.
Yeah, super pumped about that. I think he compares himself to Nathan McKinnon, and anyone can say that. I say that in my beer league, in a league in which I can barely skate or pass the puck. But when you look at his highlights, the skill is certainly there. So kudos to Mike Greer for taking a swing on that.
Yeah, the way I tape my stick is just like Nathan McKinnon's. Man, we have the same skill set.
We're exactly the same.
Yeah. Well, we've spoke a lot about the young Bucks, but I know all Kings fans know the next name we're going to talk about. Logan Couture, still on the Sharks, long-time participant there in San Jose. Missed most of last season and will start this season on the IR. What is the history with the injury? Is he expected to be available this year? How is that looking for you guys?
Yeah, it's not looking great. He's missed the last 15 or 16 months of hockey. And like you mentioned, he'll be on the IR, and he and the Sharks are working towards him coming back and playing this year. I personally am not optimistic that that's going to happen. When you read the quotes from Logan Couture and from the Sharks recently, it sounds pretty discouraging. They don't even have a timetable for him to even resume skating, let alone playing. So I worry about his availability for this year. I'm not optimistic. He said that he wouldn't be, pushing to come back and rehab and play if he didn't think that he could come all the way back. So I'm hoping that he's right, but I think there was a quote from him the other day where he said that they're still trying to find what works in terms of his rehab. That does not sound great. I think that if I felt aimless in my rehab, I would probably be concerned. So if I was a betting man, I probably would not put money on Logan Couture coming back anytime soon.
For all Kings fans who don't know, what is this injury at this moment?
It's been such a long time since it happened. I honestly don't even remember. I think it's a hip injury. I will fact check myself on that. But it's been such a long time. I've honestly forgotten what it is.
So injury that's been around for a long time to where you completely forgot what it was, and no timetable for return. Doesn't
Sorry, it's a deep groin issue, which I've never heard of. I guess that falls under the lower body injury category, but it is a deep groin issue.
Those deep groins, man, you can't skate with those deep groins.
No, you cannot. They are such a nag every time.
Well, I know some players want to play with one team their entire career. Has he said anything about being okay being traded or helping if it benefits the team get assets because his LTIR money? Like how has the talk been around that?
Yeah, I haven't heard a ton of talk in terms of trade, but I do know that Logan Couture has said many times, including recently, that he loves San Jose. He loves being a Shark. He wants to finish his career here. He started a family here. So he's made it very clear that this is where he wants to be. I He does have a modified no trade clause or no move clause. So that suggests that he could at least be open to the possibility of a trade. But as long as he thinks he can come back, he'll be here. And trade talk is pretty quiet on the Logan Couture front.
Well, let's switch it over to the backside, the blue line. Lots of names there that might be new. You guys moved a lot of people out on the blue line. What are some of the new names there? How are the lines shaking up, and maybe what are your concerns with this group?
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about the addition of Jake Wallman. He's really the big blue line acquisition that they had from the offseason. And first, what they gave up to get him, I think it was a steal. And I know that a lot of people are kind of low on Wallman after last year because I think they thought he was going to build on his previous season a little bit more. But the bottom line is the Sharks need talent on the blue line, and they need some kind of offensive ability from the back end. And Jake Wallman brings that pedigree. So I'm pumped that he's here. The way that the pairings have been shaking out in camp and the way that I think it's going to be going into the season is Mario Ferraro has been playing with Cody Ceci. Jake Wallman has been playing with Jan Ruda, and Henry Thrun and Matt Benning have been paired up. And Jan Ruda got hit in the face with a puck today in practice, I believe. So his ability to start the season is actually in jeopardy right now. So the Sharks do have a couple of younger defensemen that are still in camp. Luca Cannoni is a really highly thought of prospect that a lot of the Sharks fans, including me, are really pumped about. And then they've got Jack Thompson in camp as well. So if Ruda misses any amount of time, we could be seeing one or both of those guys finding their way into the lineup, which I think would be really exciting because they also bring some offensive ability. They're both known as good two-way defensemen. And for the Sharks, the blue line will for sure be the weakness on this team. There's just no doubt about it. Even with the addition of Wallman, they don't have a ton of puck moving ability back there. To give these guys credit, they're all pros. They're gamers. They're going to grind it out. I think they all follow the lead of Mario Ferraro. Jan Ruda is obviously a cup champion and is really well thought of in the league. Henry Thrun is an up and coming player. So maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised if some of the younger guys take a big step this year. But the big concern for them is that they just don't have that bona fide puck moving defenseman. The days of Erik Karlsson and Brent Burns and Dan Boyle are long gone. And it was not uncommon last season for the Sharks to spend 2, 3, 4 minutes in their own zone. And I know that because every time they were out there for more than like 90 seconds, that little graphic would pop up counting their shift. And it was not uncommon to see a 4-minute shift for the Sharks defenseman. So it speaks to how much they struggle to move the puck. I don't see that getting too much better this season. But who knows? Maybe if there's an injection with the young guys like Cannoni or Jack Thompson, then maybe they'll improve in that area. But I'm not counting on it.
Kings are also looking forward to the young bloods taking forward. I mean, obviously losing Drew Doughty's huge, but being able to see more of Jordan Spence and Brant Clark kind of take over and see what they can do. I think we're kind of interested to having more puck moving defensemen on our end as well. With that being said, part of playing defense is stopping the puck. You mentioned it earlier. Sharks go out and get their goalie of the future and Askarov. In my opinion, didn't really give up too much to get him. I thought it was kind of a steal. We have a saying on our podcast here, #goalies. I mean, you could pay a goalie $8 million and he could be garbage, and then you can get 2 or 3 good seasons out of veterans who thought you didn't even think were still in the league. So it's just kind of a weird position. But Askarov has been touted as one of the top goalie prospects of this last decade. Has found his footing in the AHL. He played for the Milwaukee Admirals last year, I believe.
That's correct, and he was an all-star for them. I think the last 2 years in a row.
So comes over in a trade, and what is the expectations for him this year? I know he's injured right now, correct?
He's injured right now. It's not thought to be serious, and he should be back soon, but he has not been on the ice yet in training camp.
So, I mean, he left Nashville because he didn't want to be a career AHLer or a backup. Most likely going to start this season in the AHL because he hasn't been at camp. But where do you kind of see him fitting in once he's healthy? Do you think he fits in directly as the number one? Do you think it'll be a 1A, 1B? How do you view the goalie room with him in it?
Yeah, it's interesting. The goalie competition here in training camp has been described as up for grabs. And I think even Askarov said himself before he got hurt that he felt like if he played well enough in this preseason that he had a legit chance to be the starting goaltender on night one. With the injury, that obviously won't happen. The Sharks haven't been super... they haven't said much about the plan for Askarov, but what we heard when the trade happened is that he is comfortable with them sending him to the AHL if that's what they want to do. Or obviously, if they want to start him in the NHL, he'll obviously be more than happy to do that. So it's what I see happening this season is Blackwood and Vanacek are going to be the starting tandem in the NHL. Askarov will come back and go to the AHL with the Barracuda. He'll rebound from the injury. And Blackwood and Vanacek are both on expiring contracts this season. So it's possible that we see Askarov at some point earlier in the regular season. But my guess is that one of those two Sharks goaltenders, either Blackwood or Vanacek or both, will be moved at the trade deadline. Granted good health and good play. And then that's going to be Askarov's time to come in and really take the reins. So after the trade deadline, I think we're going to see a lot of Askarov, and that's going to really be his opportunity to take the reins and hopefully build a lot of momentum going into next season where he'll hopefully be the undisputed number one.
A lot of goalies, come up and they play well, and then they come up to a team. If they're drafted high in the first round, they're coming up to a team that's usually not very good, and then they see a lot of shots, high quantity and high quality for the shooter. Is it just hey, like he's been in the AHL, he's got to go through it, we got to throw him out there, or is there something in your mind like maybe he should wait one more year? We get a couple more of these young guys that come up, our defensive core maybe is a little bit better, and then we put him in a better situation. How's your viewpoint on the timing of his entry to the league?
The Sharks have been pretty patient with taking their time to get guys to the NHL. They have not been in a rush to elevate any top prospect to the NHL, and that includes guys like William Eklund. So they will be patient if they think it's the right thing to do. There were plenty of young rookie goaltenders that played for the Sharks last season that got absolutely shelled. Magnus Krona, who went the other way in that trade, got plenty of looks in the NHL and definitely was getting sunburned on the back of his neck from the light going off all the time. And he's not the only one. They gave Georgi Romanov a lot of looks in the NHL last year as well. Part of that was necessity because there were injuries to Mackenzie Blackwood, and then they traded Kaapo Kähkönen. So if they have good health, there might not be a rush to get Askarov to the NHL, at least until the trade deadline. But they also have shown, whether through necessity or not, that they will put a young goaltender behind this D-core and let him fend for himself.
If you had to put the over-under on starts for Askarov in the NHL next year, where would you put it?
Oh, that is a great question. I'm going to say the over-under is going to be like 14 and a half.
I think that's about fair. And I'm sure you probably could bet on it with our next sponsor here at DraftKings. You could bet. We're going to be betting on touchdowns though for our DraftKings sportsbook here, because you can call him a TD, you can call him Tutty. In for 6 touchdowns matter more here at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. We don't care how they score them. We just want to bet on touchdowns. And at DraftKings Sportsbook, it is delivering. Ready to be place your first bet? Try betting on something simple as a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app to make your pick. Looking now for on Thursday night's game for a touchdown scorer, Bijan Robinson at plus 475, Drake London plus 900. Sneaky pick might be Tyler Algier as a plus 1300 with Bijan nursing that hamstring injuries. Odds are subject to change, so keep that in mind. So ready to score a touchdown dance of your own. New King DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the Sportsbook app. Use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers and get $200 in bonus bets when you just bet $5 only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for all problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill and Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.co/ftball. I think he's going to be good for your team. I think he really is. Are there any other prospects that might come up? I know you said they nursed him a little bit. If you were to pick one guy that maybe could come up from the AHL, maybe outside of Askarov, that could make an impact, where's your vote going?
Yeah, there's a couple guys that I have in mind. I'll give you a forward and a defenseman. One guy who I think actually is still in camp right now is Ethan Cardwell, 22-year-old former 4th-round pick. He had 23 goals with the AHL Barracuda last year in 71 games. So he's been knocking on the door, and the Sharks have been pretty good about promoting players based on merit when they have openings in their roster. So I think he's a guy that we could possibly see. And then from the defensive side, Shakir Muhammadulin, he was the big piece that came back in the Timo Meier trade, along with Fabian Zetterlund. Muhammadulin played. He had a cup of coffee last year at the NHL level with the Sharks, and he actually looked pretty good. So if he builds off of that, there's obviously a need for skill and talent on the Sharks blue line. So if he continues to ramp up in the AHL and prove that he deserves another shot, or if the Sharks have any injuries, I think he would be a great guy for them to call up. Big defenseman, big shot. He can move the puck. So they call him Shaq, which I think is appropriate. And considering that we saw him for a cup of coffee last year, I think there's a decent chance that we see him again this year.
I really liked him in his draft year. I'm glad that his progression is going well. And when I saw him come back in the Meier trade, I was like, oh, okay. Like, all right. Like, I kind of like it. You know, the Devils got Luke Hughes and all that kind of stuff like that. So they might not have had a spot for him. And, you know, McMadulin coming back, I thought that was an interesting piece, especially for a team that is starving for, help on the blue line. I think that's a very good pick. And he seems like a guy that could earn his play by the end of the year for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that was before the Sharks had Sam Dickinson. So when they acquired Muhammadulin, he was their number one defense prospect before Dickinson came in. And so I think the sky's the limit for him. And I would not be surprised if we saw him by the end of the season at the NHL level.
Now, it's very rare to go from last to first in the hockey. So I don't know if that's your expectation for this season, but it seems like the rebuild is starting to tilt towards the middle half or so. Where do you think they are in the rebuild? What are the expectations for you this season as a Sharks fan? And what would you put as what's a successful season in your eyes?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have them finishing in last place. They're probably not wrong. And I don't think that's an indictment of what the Sharks have done in the last couple of seasons or of the kind of team that they're going to be putting on the ice. A big part of it is just the fact that this is still the early stage of the rebuild. And, depending on who you talk to, they've either been rebuilding for the last few years now, or you can say that there's a stage before the rebuild, which is the tank. So they did the tank. They're now at the first year of the rebuild. They have a lot of young guys that are going to be getting bigger and faster and stronger and developing their skills and learning how to play at the NHL level. So there's still going to be growing pains. It's still early days in the rebuild process. I don't know if they'll finish in last. I don't think they'll finish any better than 7th in the Pacific. And part of the reason that they'll finish so low is, one, they're still rebuilding and they're still developing. But the other thing too is a lot of the teams around the Sharks got better. The Chicago Blackhawks, when you look at the whole Western Conference, the Blackhawks spend a boatload of money this offseason. They should be better. The Anaheim Ducks, they did not do anything this offseason, but they did, Trevor Zegras is now healthy. So that's kind of like acquiring someone. It's another year of Leo Carlsson, so they should get better as well. I think for the Sharks, a successful season, I think they can win 25 games. I think they can get 60 points in the standings. And those are both a huge jump from their 19 wins and 47 points or whatever it was. It's disgusting to even say that, but that would be a big step for them. And I would consider that a win for them this year.
I always remember thinking back, to it. And as a Kings fan in the rebuilding days, I was like, I just want to pick. I hope the young stars show me something. I hope the young players show me something. I hope that we do finish in the bottom 5 to get another top pick, because we're on, it'd be nice to get another high pick before maybe we start looking at what, where we're moving in the future, and then just kind of see glimpses of what the future could be. Like, what is Macklin Celebrini? What is William Eklund? Will Will Smith be anything? Does Mac McDougal get that? Or what is Askarov? Like, I think there's so many questions about the prospects for you guys, and it was the same way for the Kings. I think that's kind of where I hung my hat that season. And if any Sharks fans are listening out there, I think that's where you got to hang your hat, is find the bright side with these prospects and kind of see what your team's possibility could be for the future.
Yeah, you want to see those glimpses. I totally agree. If Celebrini's able to get 50 or 60 points, I think that would be incredible. I think that would be a huge win. If Will Smith is able to be consistent and play a really well-rounded game, because we all know what he can do offensively, right? I think the knock on him has been, can he do it at both ends of the ice? Can he be really responsible defensively? If he shows that, I think that's a huge win. If the power play looks better this year, even if the Sharks aren't winning games, but if their power play looks better, that's a massive win, because their power play has been horrible the last couple of years. So you just want to see those building blocks. You want to see them buying into what Ryan Warsofsky is selling. And even if it's not pretty and it doesn't bear out, in terms of wins or points, if you see these guys taking a step in the right direction, that's a massive win for this team.
I agree. Well, Nick, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Before we let you go, please tell all of our fans where they can follow you and watch your content.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at AllSharksNoBite. You can listen to the podcast on pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Check it out on Google. You'll find it surely. I try to record episodes once a week. It's usually closer to once every other week. And we're having a lot of fun there. We tangent sometimes. Sometimes I get caught up talking about my fantasy hockey team, because it's, not to brag, it's kind of a dynasty. I usually finish in the top 3. It's not a big deal. But yeah, check me out, AllSharksNoBite, on Twitter at AllSharksNoBite. And this has been a blast, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. As always, you can find our content here at Hockey Royalty at hockeyroyalty.com. All of our Twitters are scrolling across the bottom. Thanks again for our wonderful sponsors here at THPN with BetterHelp and DraftKings. Thanks for coming on, man, and hope you have a good season watching your team.
Likewise, can't wait for some Sharks versus Kings coming up soon.
There we go. And as always on this podcast, go Kings, go.